on reasoning, because when you talk about thinking, you will also have to understand about reasoning, because the whole reason why we think about something there must be a reason. Whatever we do in this world, we always have a reason for it. Okay. And then why is design thinking important? How to apply it? Why is it important to your life? Some of you are going to graduate soon. Some of you are undergraduates undergoing your final year project. Some of you are postgraduates performing your research. Some of you are postgraduates doing your coursework or master's or dissertation. So each and every individual, regardless of your background or regardless of who you are, can actually apply DT, design thinking. So this is how important design thinking is, because it is relevant to the world now, especially with globalization, and especially like when we talk about the current happenings now with the COVID-19. This is how we can actually see design thinking has actually been used or applied in order to solve issues or problems. Okay, so we will go through several examples as well. Why I want to highlight in the importance of DT is that some organizations, such as our Ministry of Health in Malaysia, has actually applied design thinking in order to solve the issues or the problems that are currently happening. And WHO, I'm sure, also has applied somewhat design thinking elements when it comes to trying to solve issues or trying to provide information not only to a particular person, but also to the whole world. All right. Okay. And then we would also go a little bit more on the technicalities. Now, if you talk about thinking, it's pretty much very open. Thinking is something of a very broad subject matter. But in design thinking, we can actually put it in a nice framework or a nice step-by-step guidelines whereby there are certain principles to be adhered to. So this is what we're going to touch base as well, all right? And then we'll go a little bit more in detail. When we already know the principles, we would go into the DT phase. Okay, there are a few phases which we will look at one by one. Okay, and then different thinking types and how these different thinking types are related back, or how it is being implemented within the DT, within the design thinking. And of course, I would give you some applications that are relevant to all of you, especially the students. And these DT applications would be able to actually make you use later on in the future. All right, once you have finished this course, then we can actually make use, take advantage of what you have learned today. Okay, so those are the 7 components that you will be learning today. Okay, now some disclaimer. All right, just to let you know what this course might not be about. All right, now this is of course a session, a sharing session. All right, and it is not yet a masterclass. All right. Why I say this is because if you want to learn really design thinking and then creating the processes, the prototypes, the design sprints, for example, it would at least take you a 1 semester course, all right? Or probably a 30 hours course is when you can consider yourself as a design thinking person or a design thinking, not yet an expert though. In order to be an expert, you have to have a few years of experience, okay, after taking the course. I don't consider myself as an expert, all right? I have learned design thinking from various sources, various organizations in design, all right? And I would not call today's session as a masterclass, because today is more for you to be exposed on design thinking. Today is also for you to immerse on the general idea what design thinking is all about, in order to become more well-rounded, more understanding about the current trends, and also to ensure that you are also exposed to the concepts of design thinking, because this would be really important for you to use not only in your studies life, but also in your career life, or I'm sure some of you will become entrepreneurs. And when we talk about entrepreneurs, you are also possible to work in social entrepreneurship. So these are all the types of thinking that requires design thinking in order for you to be successful, inshallah. Okay, and the design thinking perspective today would be mainly on understanding the important concepts for you to be able to move further, okay, for you to be able to understand better in the future. If you happen to be really interested about design thinking after the session with me today, you can actually learn more by signing up to online courses, all right? For example, the Stanford Design School has an online course, which is rather expensive, but if you have the budget, why not? Okay. And there are so many resources widely available in the internet. Okay. Some of the things that I will share with you are actually obtained publicly, is obtainable publicly. Some of the items are what I have learned with a design thinking academy called AJ, okay, AJ, which I will also, of course, share with you guys. But again, design thinking, as I said, is such a very broad subject matter, and hence there are so many school of thoughts as well. Okay, so what I am going to share with all of you here today are merely a very small gist on the basics, on the overview, and excuse me, and from there there are many things that can be broadened, extended, or expanded in terms of the view. However, the coverage in today's session, which is about 1.5 hours, will be mainly on the very important concepts which I have compiled. And at the same time, I have simplified it for you to make sure that you understand. Because the participants here today, my brothers and sisters here today are mostly coming from different various backgrounds, right? So for me, for example, I was in the science background, and then I moved on to management and doing more on public administration. So that's a bit of a transitionary. So some of you guys are coming from the sciences, some of you are from non-sciences, social sciences. So be aware that design thinking is actually applicable and relevant to any backgrounds or any subject matter expertise. So you can apply this even in computer science, product development, final year project, as I said in the beginning. So the point here today is that you need to be able to understand what design thinking is all about. Okay, and if you see the course components just now, those are the main objectives of you to be able to grasp the whole concept and idea of design thinking, so that you can think about designing in the future of the design thinking. All right. Okay. So as I said, if you Google, there are so many resources on design thinking that you can find, and there are many school of thoughts. And now there are a lot of organizations that are spiking up like mushrooms, talking about design thinking, and some of them call themselves as the design organization or a design academy, for example. So just don't get confused. As long as in today's session you are able to grasp the concept, then you will be able to move forward, and you will be able to actually expand your horizon better in design thinking in the future. All right. So those are the disclaimers. I want you to understand that today's session will not make you a master in design thinking. Okay, not yet an expert, not yet a master. Okay, I myself, as I said, don't consider myself as an expert or a master in design thinking. Okay, so life is about a lifelong journey of learning. So keep on, continue learning. All right. Okay, so excuse me. Now, when we talk about design thinking, we also like to talk about the USM agenda. So I'm sure all of you have heard about Hebat, right? Hebet. So that's a Malay word, a Bahasa Malaysia word, which means great in English. However, in USM, we have this agenda called Hebat as an acronym. Okay, so let's go quickly just to recap. Some of you might already know this, and as a USM student, you have to make sure that you are immersed, or this is part of your philosophy while being a student, or even when you have graduated, or even a staff member. You should also be aware and also be delved in the Hebat agenda. Okay, so what is Hebat? And I will let you know why I'm covering this, or as a recap for the students particularly. Okay, so H stands for holistic. All right, everyone know what holistic is about. Entrepreneurial. So I mentioned this word before. All right, now take this USM agenda, USM Hebat agenda. Okay, even the center, okay, the Hebat Development Center has organized so many wonderful programs, such as this one, for example, maybe. Okay, I hope today will be a wonderful event for you. Okay, so the whole idea of Hebat Development Center, why they are organizing all these projects, all these programs, all kinds of events to get engagement from the students, particularly to have these values or qualities instilled within the students. Okay, so I mentioned about entrepreneurial. Now, some of you guys here are possibly going to be not job seekers once you have finished your studies. Some of you might be, of course, creating jobs for others. So that is considered as entrepreneurial, right? When you create a job for others, not necessarily looking for a job. Okay, so also part of this Hebat agenda is to ensure that we have more job creators rather than job seekers. So in order to be entrepreneurial, you need to be balanced, okay, in life, in work life, daily work-life balance, professional life and personal life. And then you need to be holistic. You might want to consider jack of all trades. If you have heard of this term before, jack of all trades. Okay. Previously, we have this English saying, jack of all trades, master to none. Okay, you might have heard of this. But in the current world now, we can still be a jack of all trades, which means that you know little bits and pieces, chunks of here and there. Okay, however, you have to be at least a master to one. Remember that. So this is what holistically being is all about in the Hebat agenda. Okay, articulate. Being articulate is being able to respond to certain things quickly and accurately, efficiently and effectively. Okay. Now, of course, finally, even within the Hebat agenda, the thinking value is one of the things that is needed to be instilled in the students. So Hebat itself, all right, holistic entrepreneurial balance, articulate thinking, has covered what design thinking is required. So in each and every in each and every values, or in each and every qualities, or some people might call it as characteristics, okay, of the USM agenda for students, are all the 5 qualities or the values that needs to be instilled. And how can it be possible is through design thinking, actually. All right, even thinking, the number 5, is obtainable or achievable through design thinking. All right. Okay, so that's the USM agenda, and the Hebat Development Center has now been established specifically to encourage the hebatness. Okay, hebatness is greatness of our students who are going to be graduates, who are going to be joining the society in the future. Okay, so when you understand the USM agenda of Hebat, then it's going to be much easier for you to understand also about design thinking in this session. Okay, all right. So again, design thinking is a very broad subject. However, in today's session, I will be sharing with you on the school of thought that I have learned, okay, from various gurus and from various organizations. Okay, so EDAO is one of the design organizations that I was talking to you about. Now, when we talk about design, some of you guys who come from the School of the Arts, for example, might be thinking about the design from your perspective. Okay, so in somehow, all right, what you think, if you're from the School of the Arts, for example, you are learning product design or creative design, the thinking process in design thinking is actually taken from that particular design concept. Okay, when you're designing something, you have several steps, you have processes, you have concepts. So in this case, EDO, one of the pioneering organization who established design thinking. Now, just for your info, history is not so important. I mean, in terms of design thinking, history is not so important because it is again very broad and very much interrelated to each other. But it's as you know, history is quite important, okay, in our daily life. But what I wanted to highlight here is, I mean, the not so important is for you to remember, but it's good for you to know about a bit about the history of design thinking. So originally, Stanford, the university in the US, Stanford University came up with the concept taken from design academies who are establishing products, who are establishing prototypes. And they came up with the School of Design, okay, and starting from the establishment of the design thinking concepts and also projects, many organizations pioneered by IDEO, okay, IDEO sounds like idea, but it's actually O for the organization. And IDEO is the leading organization basically for design thinking. And from starting from there, they have trained so many people around the world to understand better about design thinking. So when you look at their definition of design thinking, it's basically to encourage organizations, okay, to focus on people, to focus on stakeholders. All right. I hope you're quite aware of the term stakeholders. So stakeholders are the people that work closely with us in whatever purpose, professional or personal. So when we do design thinking, it will encourage us to create better internal processes if you're in an organization, or even if you are a marketeer, it will be able to provide a better promotion market, or even it can create better products and of course services. So if you look at the definition here again, what I want you to focus is the keyword people and creating. So you're creating something for people. All right. So this is the important understanding about design thinking first and foremost. All right. Now, this is something from an academy that I have learned. You can Google AJ and Smart. They have so many resources about design thinking. Now, the description from AJ and Smart, which is a design academy, as I said, it says here in simple words, design thinking is a mindset. So it's just about the mindset of how you think about things and how you solve issues, how you solve problems. And again, from this academy's perspective, they talk about innovation. Okay, so the current trend again now in the world is about innovating something. But when you want to innovate something, you have to think about what you want to innovate. So this is when design thinking come into the picture. And when you have design thinking, putting in mind as a mindset or as a concept or as whatever philosophy, for example, and of course, in the current trend now, we have technology, right? So again, you see the keyword here is human-centric approach. Okay, in the previous definition by IDEO, that is human, a people, and creation. So in the description by Agent Smart, look at the number 2, human-centric approach, which means that you have to focus on the people, again, the stakeholders. Who are the people that you're thinking about to innovate something? Okay, and of course to complement technology, but of course with always bearing in mind what the humans or what other stakeholders needs or the importance of people's involvement in certain innovation. Okay, so I'll just read through. It helps teams find the intricate balance. Okay, what makes sense to the end users? What is technology doable? Because you might be seeing this, especially maybe if you are in engineering or maybe in computer sciences. Some of the technology or some of the innovation created are really marvelous, amazing, excellent. However, they lack in terms of the service or in terms of the end user understanding or even about how to use it. Okay, the means, the end to the means of this innovation might be really huge, but only a small percentage of people are actually benefiting or taking advantage of the technology. So this is when there is a gap between the human-centric and also the technology, the product. So this is when design thinking is not being used or implemented in such projects or programs. Okay, all right. So you have heard from me already. This is of a bit of already some introduction. So I want to now hear from you. Okay, can we do just a small exercise, a quick one? Maybe it will take about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so you already understand the definition, the description, and a bit of Hebat agenda. So I'm sure each and every one of you here joins this program today to maybe learn a bit more, or maybe to get a new exposure, or maybe you have never heard, but you are so keen and curious to know what design thinking is about. So what is design thinking to you? I just want you to quickly type in inside the chat box. Okay, just type in away and see. Let's see what is design thinking to you. All right, and then I will just read through. Okay, can we take some time? All right, to quickly have a quick chat over the screen. Okay. Okay, so let's do that, everyone. Okay, so I can't seem to see my chat box. Okay, so you guys can start typing in what is design thinking to you. All right, come, let's do that. Okay, I hope everyone is able to see the chat box. I can't seem to see, I'm not sure why. Okay, back events. Okay, let me just quickly close the PowerPoint. Okay, where is it? Oops. Okay.
You see the chat box?
Not yet, Puan Farhana. I do not know why.
Just click on the participants icon, I believe.
Okay, all right. Now I can see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
There are questions.
Okay, so I'm just going to read through. Okay, if I have idea, a design pattern, but I don't know how to draw or use Photoshop, what should I do? Okay, all right. Good question, very specific. Okay, now the design thinking that we are going through today is not really specific to technicalities on designing from the technical perspective, but it's a design, it's actually to think by design. Okay, but just to answer you quickly, yesterday I attended one session also organized by HDC, by the Hebat Development Center. It's called the Canva. So Canva, for example, is one possible option for you who might not be from a design background but would like to design wonderful, beautiful things. Then you can actually use this design tool, okay, the Canva, okay. But today is more on the thinking part. But just to answer one of our friends here, Eugene okay. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so Miss Yong Chor Ng, creating a theme for special functions. Okay, all right, very good. Rebecca Elsa Lourdes, thinking out of the box. Okay, all right. So it's a different perspective of looking at things. Okay, that is also an important um, approach, or thinking out of the box is something that is part of design thinking. It's about the way you think. Okay, Alia Yusuf, thank you. Very good. Think by design. Okay, yes. Puan Farhana, thank you. Oh, Mr. Sawan is here. Hahaha, Canva. Okay, Mr. Sawan is actually the trainer for Canva yesterday. I hope we will have the opportunity again to have another session. So Eugene might want to consider joining the session if HTC organize again. There's not more feedbacks. We have about 100 participants here today. So can I have maybe about 5 more from the participants? What do you think design thinking is about? Okay, so for those who have just joined us, thank you for joining us. We are still now at the point of design thinking. Okay, can we have more feedback? Okay, yeah, Puan Farhana, thank you. Okay. Type it in, guys. There's no right or wrong answers. It's about your thoughts and opinions. So you have heard in the beginning, about my introduction on what design thinking is about and how the Hebat agenda, okay, is actually it complements, not complement, but complements the design thinking and vice versa. So design thinking complements also Hebat, and Hebat complements design thinking. So, okay, can we have some more? Everyone seems to be quiet, or probably you are still not so clear about design thinking. Don't worry. We will cover and we will peel individually each and every design thinking concept. Okay. All right. Anyone else? So far, we have only a few. I was hoping at least maybe 30 feedback so we can read through together. Okay, Mr. Sawan. Thinking strategically, taking into considerations all important aspects. Okay, excellent. All right. This actually covers and encompasses what design thinking is about. To think strategically and practically. All right, very good. Busayo, Asuntui. Okay, I think if you are doing research, you have already been given the methodology on research methodology. So design thinking, again, can also complement research methodology. So for those of you who are postgraduates doing research, for example, you can take today's session, okay, the main takeaway is how to complement and how to implement, as Busayo mentioned here, strategically and practically your research through design thinking, okay? Regardless if you are only in the literature review stage, for example, within literature review, you can already implement yourself the design thinking. Okay. All right. Maybe one last one. Okay. Axel Tan. Process of creative problem solving by understanding the user's behavior. Challenge, hypothesis, and comes out innovative. Okay. All right. If you have Googled that, that is also great. Okay. So while you are listening, you can also Google, open up and do some search on your own about design thinking. Okay, so this is also again an important aspect of design thinking. Problem solving, creatively, critically thinking. Okay, which we will also cover a bit. Behavior. Okay, so Excel has also put in an important keyword here. It's always about the user. It's always about the stakeholder that will be using, or if you think about something, all right, you would be thinking about either yourself or about somebody else. So the behavior is also very important. So the keyword here is the user's behavior. I like that. Hypothesis, okay, when we think about something, we will tend to come up to a hypothesis or conclusion, okay, and innovation, okay, which has been covered. All right. So thank you so much to all of you who has, okay, we have another one. That's Mahfuzna. Creative mind that invests to make something new. All right. Also a very interesting perspective. You invest your mind creatively, and to something new is always about innovation. All right. So let's continue. If you suddenly come to think about what you think of design thinking while we are going along the way of this session, please do so. Please type in a way in the chat. Okay, we will later on read through and see if you have also any questions. Okay, all right. So, okay, I'm just going to, all right. So we have covered what is design thinking, interesting responses, interesting perspective from some participants today. All right. So what is basically design thinking? Okay. So simply put, it is a philosophy. Okay. It's a philosophy that you can always put in your daily life. Design thinking is also a technique. Okay, so if you go along with me, with us today, you might have noticed the keywords, the things that have been highlighted in this session. Okay, so besides being a philosophy about how you look at things in your perspective, it is also a technique. Okay, so when it is technique, there are of course framework, there are of course steps in the technique. Okay, design thinking is also a concept. Okay, so again, besides a technique where there are steps involved, it can be conceptually implemented where you will be able to apply thinking by design as a concept in your research, in your final year project, even in your daily life, even in a friendship, for example, or even when you are planning to cook something. Okay, for those of you who are fasting, the Muslims, when you are planning to later on prepare your iftar, your breaking fast, you can apply design thinking because it's a concept. Okay, it's also of course a mindset. Okay, so design thinking is a positive concept that you can instill as a mindset. All right, so that's why, as I said, in anything that you do in your daily life, okay, that requires thinking, apply design thinking, all right, to yourself as a mindset. Okay, so as I said, in technique, for example, there are process. So design thinking itself can be a process of thinking, all right, and you can again apply this as a process for certain projects that you will require for you to be able to think effectively and efficiently. Okay, and finally, of course, it's an approach. All right. So you see, there are a few things here that you are looking at. Okay, so simply put, these are the items or the words that describe what design thinking is about. Okay, so remember philosophy, concept, approach, mindset, technique, and process. Okay, so this is what design thinking, these are what design thinking is about. Okay, all right. Now, when you think about something, okay, there must always be a reason why you think about it. Okay, thinking versus reasoning. So before you think about something, it's always very important to understand what do you think and why do you think about it. So the why of the thinking is the reasoning behind it, correct? Now, again, there are so many types of research or school of thought about reasoning. But if you guys are from the School of Management, for example, or maybe business schools, you might understand, you might have already learned about reasoning, but the design thinking aspect of reasoning is more related to these types of reasoning that I will be sharing with you. Okay, so not necessarily design thinking, but thinking in general versus reasoning, which means that, again, as I said, the reasoning behind what you are thinking about. Okay, so there are three types of reasoning that I'm going to touch base with all of you today. Okay, so first of all, okay, deductive reasoning. Okay, now again, a disclaimer, these types of reasoning are those closest to thinking. But if you Google, you can find many other types, maybe about 6 or 7 types of reasoning. But the reasoning that we will cover here today, due to short and limited time also, will be only 3. So deductive reasoning. Now, deductive reasoning is, simply put, is something that you think of generally and come up to a specific conclusion. So when you think about something in general and then you go to the specifics, you actually are doing a deductive reasoning. So the word itself, deduct, means it's like from top to bottom. All right, a general perspective and then into a specific perspective. So an example would be, okay, take me for example. Okay, um, everyone knows that humans, men, are mortal, which means that we will face death one day. Okay, and then the statement of me as an example, Aizat is a man. So what is the deductive reasoning? Is Aizat is mortal. Aizat will be, I would die one day, right? So that is an example of deductive reasoning. So top down from general aspect of thinking to specific. Okay, hopefully everyone is clear. If you are not clear, type in the box chat away straight away. Okay, and when you talk about the deductive reasoning, as I said, it also depends on the factual basis of what you already know. Okay, so that's deductive reasoning. Okay, so inductive reasoning, the second one. Now, the inductive reasoning, if we talk about deductive just now, it's from general to specific. But in inductive reasoning, okay, when you think about a certain reason in inductive reasoning, it's actually from specific to general. Okay, specific to general means you are going to form a general thinking based on the specific reasons. Okay, and usually in inductive reasoning, the generalization is usually based on some incidents that you have gone through, okay, or maybe observation of facts, again, that you already know. However, it's like a bit bottom up. So deductive is deduce, meaning to from general to specific, but inductive is bottom up, okay, to induct, to induce the reasoning based on your thinking. Okay, so an example, okay, would be most of you guys are students here. So inductive reasoning example, you have a friend by the name of maybe Ahmad, for example. Okay, so Ahmad, every semester he has, okay, let's say this semester, now that we're going through online learning and all, Ahmad has online class at 8 a.m. in the morning. Okay, now second reasoning, Ahmad is a very punctual person. He is known to his friends as very punctual. Okay, so the inductive reasoning here, all right, in the thinking would be Ahmad will usually prepare his laptop, his internet and everything at 7:45 to make sure that he can log in to his online class every day by 8 a.m. So he doesn't want to be late. Okay, so it's the same if you're talking about actual classes. If Ahmad has a class at 8, he will be leaving his desasiswa, his hostel by 7:30, for example, to make sure he catches the bus. Or if he's staying in CG, for example, and he's at the School of Physics, he can walk starting at 7:50 to ensure that he arrives at one of the classes or maybe one of the lecture halls. Okay, so can you see the difference now? The deductive is from general to specific, but inductive, in the case of Ahmad just now, he has classes every day. Okay, so from specific to general. Okay, which means that Ahmad in the end would be able to reason inductively that he has to be earlier to visit or to start working in order for him to start to arrive to his class at 8 because he is punctual. Okay, all right. So that's two. The third one is abductive reasoning. Okay, sounds quite interesting. Abductive science sounds quite, I would say, abductive. If you have watched some movies from Liam Neeson, in about abduction, Taken, the movie Taken. So that's about abduction. His daughter was kidnapped. So abduction is usually relating to kidnapping, or maybe if you're into sci-fi, alien abduction. Okay, but there is a type of reasoning called abductive reasoning. Okay, when we talk about abductive reasoning, simply put, it is an iterative way of reasoning. So it's not really either specific to general or general to specific conclusion, but rather it can be starting from a specific reasoning to a general conclusion and vice versa, and it will be iterative, which means that it can start and end however that is necessary. Okay. Now, an example, okay, a good example about inductive reasoning is when we talk about COVID-19, all right, we have people who are symptomatic, which means that they have cough, they have fever or flu, a certain temperature of their body that indicate that might be symptomatic. Okay, I hope I got that right. If we have any medical students in here, please correct my pronunciation if I pronounce it wrongly. Okay, and if they are asymptomatic, which means that they have a certain sickness but they do not show any symptoms, then they might be asymptomatic. So you see, in abductive reasoning, if you take an example of COVID-19, a person who has a symptom, okay, might think, okay, because of the reason of these symptoms, he or she might be worried that he or she has contracted COVID-19. Okay, but then this is based on reading. Okay, now some of you guys would know WebMD. I'm guilty of using that also sometimes. Rather than going to a doctor or taking medicine, I try to look at the symptoms and what might be the reason I'm having this kind of cough or fever, for example. So the reasoning, okay, behind the abductive reasoning in your thinking is that, okay, the example is COVID-19. You have symptoms, you go through WebMD and you were reading through, or you open WHO's website and find out that, hey, you actually have some kind of symptoms that might be related to COVID-19, and so you are already worried, thinking that you might have COVID-19. But then when you actually go to the doctor does checking and eventually found out that your metabolism is slow because you are fasting, for example. So that is deductive reasoning. Okay, so from general specific to general, for example, it may or may not be true when we talk about abductive reasoning. It's not really based on factual basis, but more on opinionated basis. Okay, so there might be two different answers for one, two different reasoning for one thinking, or there might be one reasoning for a few thinking. So it's always counter interact. Okay, so it takes on mainly logical assumption. Okay, explanation, inference, conclusion, hypothesis. Some of you mentioned about hypothesis. So in general, abductive reasoning is about best guess from your observation, okay, from your own listening, experience, upbringing, exposure, surrounding, and environment. Okay, not that deductive and inductive is not having this similar concepts. However, deductive and inductive are more factual basis, but abductive is more about your opinion or guessing, which can be both true or untrue. Okay, so hopefully you have understood what reasoning. Okay, because now we're going to go through an activity. All right. Okay, so scan the QR code, or if you are on your laptop, you can type in menti.com. Okay, and then type in the 446517 is the code. Okay, so okay, guys. Okay, very good. Okay, let's wait for a few more. Okay, we are still waiting for players. Okay, it's a very simple activity for you to understand better about reasoning. Okay, only 7 out of. Okay. All right, guys. Okay. Okay, let's wait for a few more. Only 19. Okay. All right, guys, come. Everyone join us. Okay, use your phone or use your laptop if you're in front of your laptop. Okay, we'll start the quiz when we have 50 people. Okay. Okay, about 20 more participants will wait before we start the quiz. Okay, I'm sure we have 113 total participants. Okay, are the rest only signing in and going somewhere or sleeping maybe? Huh? Out of 114, only 38 so far signed up. I hope your internet connectivities wherever you are not too bad.
Yeah, we can see the participant attentive or inattentive.
Aha, okay.
This
So out of
statistics
114,
is
maybe about half are actually not in front of their screens, huh? Or maybe playing something else, games.
all right.
Okay, 7 more and then I'll start the quiz. Okay, it's just one simple question to see your understanding about reasoning. Okay. Okay, 5 more. Hopefully, those who are not joining is not having any problems technically. Okay. So 48 is the number of participants on my list. Okay. Anyone else joining us? Okay, if not, we will, okay, 49. Maybe somebody's having some problems. Oh, 48 and then 49. Somebody might be having problems. Okay, I'll start the quiz now. Okay, ready? Okay, so which is the best reasoning for design thinking? So just now there were 3, right? So which is the best? So you have 15 seconds. Inductive, deductive, abductive, which one? So remember what inductive is? It's more top down. Time's up. Okay, we have 50 responses. Ah, okay. All right. So majority, let's see who's the, okay. Aha. Okay, so congratulations.
Very interesting.
So, yeah, Lichok, congrats. You can claim your prize from HDC when MCO ends, okay? Go to HDC.
Yeah, congratulations, Ichok.
Okay, all right. Okay, so if you saw previously, the answer was actually deductive reasoning. Okay, right. Let me just close this down for a while. Okay, all right. So back to our screen. Okay, back to PowerPoint now. Okay. I hope you guys had quite rather fun there. All right. So actually, design thinking is about being abductive. Okay, so that's the answer. Inductive again is very much factual basis. Okay, from specific, from general to specific, and deductive is from specific to general. So you will see later on when we talk about design thinking, it's more of an iterative, inter contextual, and also interrelated thinking. Okay, so yeah, congratulations. Now, the reasoning that is always associated with design thinking is abductive, which means that there are more than one way of how to observe and perceive things for a particular reason when you think about it. Okay, so hopefully everyone is clear. All right, this is important concept where the reasoning is abductive when you are doing design thinking. Okay, all right, so now we will go a little bit more into technicalities. All right, so in the beginning it was more on the conceptual or overview, let's call it, of DT. All right, now the whole idea of design thinking is to bridge the gap. Okay, you might have heard what I mentioned earlier in the beginning. The user, the stakeholder, the person, the people that you are thinking about is the most important element when it comes to design thinking. So basically, it's just to work something to solve a problem, to be innovative. Some of you have answered that. You have hypotheses about something, but a human-centric approach is what design thinking is about. We want to bridge the gap between you okay, and the user, you and the stakeholder, you and the design, or you and the problem that you're trying to solve, bearing in mind with those who are affected by this particular thinking. Okay, and we also go with the characteristics. Okay, a lot of companies now, Fortune 500 companies, for example, Coca-Cola, IBM, you name it, all right, the multinational companies have already been implementing the design thinking as a characteristic because they want to compete with their competition. Okay? And again, if you Google DT, design thinking, you would find a lot of items that you might not be familiar with, such as the UX term. Okay, UX is basically user experience. All right, UI is user interface. So those who are in computer sciences or engineering might be quite familiar with the term. So you see, UX, user experience, traditionally or previously has been called these terminologies, and the designers or the creators of design thinking have actually combined all these important aspects or characteristics to make it as a design thinking. So when you talk about user interaction, user interface, or user experience, these are all design thinking basically. All right, and it is not a standalone discipline. So that's why when you look at the reasoning just now, abductive reasoning is what explains design thinking when you think to reason. Okay, all right, so let's have a look at this photo now. The Norman door. The Norman door phenomenon. Okay, some of you in the School of Management, I think you might know this. The Norman door phenomenon is actually created by a person by the name of Norman. I cannot remember exactly the history, but if you look at this photo here of a door entering to a building, okay, I'm not sure if you guys have experienced this, but I have so many times experienced this, especially when I go to the mall, for example, with my family. So when you go to the mall, usually if you are the head of family, you will be the one who will be opening the door, right? Have you encountered a problem where you actually push, but it's actually to pull the door, or vice versa? And there is no indication here whether you should pull or push, right? So try to observe this later on in the future. If you happen to go and buy things at the supermarket, for example, when you're entering a door, is there an indication whether there is a push or pull required? So this is one aspect of design thinking. The Norman door phenomenon is when, how they conclude the Norman door phenomenon is that, so students from design, from School of the Arts, for example, might have also learned this in your product design or what do you call that? Not interactive, creative design, I think. Okay, the success in the Norman door phenomenon is when the design is successful when people actually know whether they need to use it, whether they need to push or pull. So the simplest design thinking approach is just to put a label here, right, at the rail, whether to push or to pull. So it's quite simple, but often neglected. Okay? You might think that it is supposed to be common sense to put a label, but for example, the photo that you're looking, this is an actual door for to enter a building. Okay, so this is a Norman door phenomenon where designing itself is related to the design thinking concept. Okay, I'm sure product design students in the School of the Arts can really relate to this. When you're creating a product, you have to make sure that the user experience should be the most important key element. Okay, the Norman door phenomenon. All right, so you understand that. So Norman door phenomenon is taken into account very necessarily when it comes to design thinking. All right, now we move DT principles. We move on to understanding the concepts, the philosophy, and now the principles. Okay, there are three main pillars in design thinking. Empathy, all right? So why empathy? Remember users, remember stakeholders, remember person. So when you are thinking by design, you will start with the main principle of empathy, which means that you are empathizing with somebody else's needs, or even for your own needs, and how it can complement with your other stakeholder or person. Okay. ideation. Okay, once you have empathized, once you have understood what is the issue, okay, what is the actual problem, this is when you spark with an idea. That is the ideation principle. And finally, experimentation. Okay, so just understand these three principles when you talk about design thinking. When you're thinking, you might not realize that you are actually doing design thinking or thinking by design, but always have these three main pillars in your mind when you are thinking. Okay. Now those are the principles. Okay. Now, when you go a little bit more in detail, all right, if you are actually attending a course, the master class for design thinking, you will actually be learning individual steps on each and every phases. So that's why it takes at least 30 hours to understand. Okay, and the phases are actually intertwined, meaning this is not a one single linear phase, okay, but rather it goes back and forth to the front, to the back, because it is all about creating something, creating an experience, a solution for the users, for the stakeholders. And this is when we talk about human-centric approach. Okay, as I said, we're going to go through how to empathize, the process, define how is it, ideate, how is it prototype, how is it test, how is it, but rather we will touch briefly what are the basic concepts about empathize. Okay, so if you compare to the pillars just now, those are the principles, but in the actual design thinking, you are going through phases of solving a problem and creating a solution. Okay, so the design thinking process starts with empathize itself, starts with empathize itself, which is the main pillar. Okay, and then before you ideate, which is the next pillar, okay, the next principle, you define. So in design thinking, if you really go into technicalities, for research students, for example, you are quite familiar with the research methodology. So I think, I don't know, in my opinion, in research methodology, the toughest um, phase would be the literature review, right? So imagine that this defining phase is very similar to literature review. However, they're not the same in terms of design thinking. So the define process is when you are actually trying to understand better about the problems from your users, okay, or from yourself if you're trying to do something. Put it in such a way like this. You are going to break fast this evening, right? And when you're going to break fast, you have to empathize to know what you want to eat, empathize with yourself, or if you have family, you want to know what the family wants. Some might have different dietary restrictions. Some might be vegetarian, or even if you're inviting friends for iftar, for breaking fast, you need to understand the background of this person. Maybe he or she has some allergy, all right? And then you start defining. Defining means you start looking at what are the things that you want to cook, okay? And then you start ideating different recipes, okay? And finally, you might want to already have a prototype, which means that the actual things to be tested out, okay? Maybe if you are cooking let's say a curry, then for those of you who are fasting, you cannot really taste, but you can put some curry on your tongue to see whether it's good or not. So if you look at an example of cooking a recipe, the design thinking is actually not the recipe, but rather the recipe is actually ingrained in within one of these phases. So define, ideate, prototype, for example. Okay. It can be in all of the phases, okay, to the point that you get the product which you test. Okay. Now that's a simple example. All right, in cooking, in having a recipe to cook for iftar today. Let's look into a bit technical example. Somebody is developing a software, for example, if you're a software developer in computer sciences. So I think for those in computer sciences, you have learned this software engineering, which is very, very, very much similar to design thinking itself. Okay, so you start with empathizing, you start to understand the customer's problems, and then you define what they are. At the define process is when you have to interview, okay, or you have to sit down multiple times with your user to understand about their specification or their requirements. And usually this define phase in design thinking is the hardest. Again, like I said, even in research, you are doing data collection, also a tough step or process. And at the same time, when you define is when you want to get to the bottom of the issue or the problem. Okay, once you have defined, you have to ideate, which means that you have to come up with the actual ways of solving it. Okay, defining is to understand the problem. Okay, appetite is to know the problem. Define is to understand the problem. Idea is to start coming up with a solution, and prototype is when you have that solution. Okay, but it is not yet ready for an actual user. So this is when you have sample size. Okay, sample size is when you can start testing. Okay, so when you test and that it doesn't work, then you have to redefine, or you have to start back by empathizing even. Okay, so again, these arrows are not unique. Okay, these arrows on the screen are just an example. So from empathize, you can prototype again. Okay, from testing, you might go back not only to define, but you might test and then you might need to empathize, or from test level, you might need to re-ideate or redo the prototype. So it is intertwined, it's interchangeable. So it's not linear, it can always go back and forth. So remember abductive reasoning, all right? So abductive reasoning somehow is related to these DT phases, okay? All right, look at the photo. I'm sure some of you guys, especially the engineers, might have seen this photo, all right? So how the customer explained it, how the project leader understood it, how the designer designed it, okay? Sorry, how the engineer, how the programmer wrote it, okay, in the case of software development, how the sales executive, all right? And then was the project documented? Well, this is also another lacking part of projects when it comes to development. Okay, what operations installed, how the customer was built, okay, that's a roller coaster. How the help desk supported it. So this is the process of after completion. And if you look at here, the customer actually explained differently and wanted differently. So you see from this photo alone, you can actually visualize why design thinking is very crucial when it comes to solving problems for the users or for the stakeholders or for the customers. If you happen to do testing or prototyping in the DT phases in the design thinking, in the development of the product, you will actually not have this issues or problems here. So this photo represent how this can actually be solved through design thinking. Okay, all right. Now, in design thinking itself, there are many types of ways of thinking. Okay, so in today's session, I want to focus only on the types of thinking that are very much related to design thinking. So let's go through one by one. Creative thinking. Okay, simply put, in creative thinking, answers are more important than questions. Okay, so you look at the issue, all right, and then there are thousands or millions of possibilities on the perspectives on how to think and maybe solve or answer the question. All right, so answers are more important than questions. So what do you want to achieve? So if you learned about the utilitarianism, yeah, okay, that's an ethics, a code of ethics approach. You might have heard this saying, the ends to a mean. Okay, so the ends to a mean means the answer is more important than the question. How you get it is not really the question or important here. Okay, so the aim of creative thinking is to stimulate curiosity and promote divergence. Okay, those of you who have read or who are fans of what is that movie? I cannot remember, but one of the series is Divergence. So Divergence is basically a different way of thinking and a different way of approaching some things. So you want to promote divergence, meaning what is this person's perspective, what is this person's perspective. So for example, if somebody is from Asia versus somebody from Europe or Africa, okay, how would they accept certain things? So this is creative thinking. It's more to stimulate curiosity. Okay, it's not about limiting your thinking. Okay, and most importantly, creative thinking is not logical. It can be non-logical. Okay, if you think creatively, you don't have to be thinking logically. Okay, anything is possible in this world. All right, so that's the one type of thinking. The second type is critical thinking. All right, so just now, creative is when answers are more important than questions. But critical thinking is when questions are more important than answers. Okay, what does it mean by that? You have answers that you want to achieve. Okay, so again, in utilitarianism is the means to an end. Okay, how you achieve something is more important than that achievement itself. Okay, so you scrutinize arguments. Okay, you become rational. Okay, you make judgments based on the necessities, assumptions, and also different types of consequence when it comes to the answer. Okay, what are the consequence of doing this? What are the consequences of doing that? Again, it can also relate to the difference in cultures. Okay, now bearing in mind that we are living now in a globalized, borderless world, so you need to do critical thinking, because what you think might be suitable for you might not be suitable for something or someone else. Okay, I'll give you an example of my recent experience attending an international conference, for example. Now, we are all put in one small classroom to do a discussion. So the facilitator was from India, okay? And some participants are Europeans, African, Asian, of course. And there is one point of time, there was a question, burning question that was asked to the facilitator. And when the person who is an European at that point of time was actually asking a question and giving opinions, the facilitator, again, who is an Indian, keeps on doing this. Okay? You might see when you speak to an Indian friend, they might be moving their head, tilting left and right. Okay? And this person started getting, the person who asked the question and giving opinion, who is a European, she's a lady, she was getting more and more upset while talking. And at some point of time, she burst and she got angry and she said, "Why do you keep on denying what I'm saying?" And the facilitator was shocked, because to the lady, when the facilitator was doing this, it's like the facilitator, the Indian facilitator, was actually saying that she is wrong. It's like, for us Malaysians, particularly, we will do like this if we don't agree. But for Indians, you do this to say, yes, I accept, or we do it this way, right? So this is when we talk about critical thinking. If you're creating a product, for example, maybe a virtual reality companion. So this virtual reality companion is talking to you, and you do not want this person to do it if you are an European or Malaysian, for example. And if you're Indian, you do not want, you might be okay with the virtual reality companion to actually do this, to say yes to you, right? So you get my point. This is when critical thinking and creative thinking has to come into picture in accordance to what are the questions that you want to answer. Okay, so again, to quickly recap, creative thinking is when answers are more important. Critical thinking is when question is more important. You have to keep on questioning in order for you to get to the answer. So a means to an end is a critical thinking. An end to a mean is creative thinking. All right. Okay, so what does creative and critical thinking leads to? Very simple. This is what design thinking is about. When you think creatively, or when you think critically, this is what design thinking is all about. Okay? All right. I will just share quickly with you about Bloom's taxonomy. Those of you who are in education, teachers or lecturers, um, Bloom's taxonomy is historically is how design thinking has adopted this Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy is the process of learning for outcomes. Okay, it is actually a learning taxonomy on education. Okay, particularly when it comes to schools. Okay, high schools or middle schools or even kindergarten. The modules or the curriculum are usually created based on Bloom's taxonomy. So the Bloom's taxonomy in teaching is when how the design thinking was adopted from. So if you look at the pyramid, it starts with create, evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, remember. And these six taxonomies are actually correlated to how you want the students to be able to achieve something in terms of their learning experience. So from the learning experience, this taxonomy, okay, created by Bloom, of course. If you Google Bloom's taxonomy, there are many information about Bloom's taxonomy, but this is the most, I would say, straightforward and direct one, which you can understand immediately. Okay, so when you create, you produce something, you evaluate. Okay, if you go back to the 5 phases of DT just now, you might notice that some of these elements are inside here. Okay, so this is just to touch base on the Bloom's taxonomy so that you can understand better how thinking by design, all right, is also interrelated to the learning experience or learning process. Okay. All right. So remember in the beginning, I mentioned about the Stanford Design School, which is the pioneering institution or school that have started with this design thinking process. So again, this is just to recap from the 5 phases. Okay. So if you look into each of the phases, empathize is when you actually interview or when you talk to someone. Okay. How do we usually get information about problems? Is when we talk or when we ask someone, right? You want to seek to understand. Define is when you have the actual interviews constructed and given or and being analyzed. Okay, challenges, decisions. So when you do an interview, okay, you would actually get the result to define the problems to be solved. Okay, so again, it's the same. You have been doing this in your daily life without realizing it, if you come to think of it. Okay, you have always been empathizing when you talk to your friend, even when you talk to yourself. For example, when you look in the mirror and say, what should I wear today? For example. So you already started the design thinking process. You empathize with yourself. So for example, oh, you're just going to class, so you just need to follow the dress code. Or if you're going to a formal party, okay, then you have to dress up. You have to wear a suit or maybe, I cannot remember what's that dress code that James Bond usually wear. Okay, yeah, for example. So you empathize with yourself and then you define and then you ideate, then you prototype and then you test. Okay, so in the case of you trying different attire, you might test in front of your mirror. Okay, so design thinking again is all about having a constructed proper way of thinking, meaning by design. Okay, so again, remember the empathize phase, the define phase, the ideate phase, the prototype phase, and of course the test phase. Okay, so the 5 phases, all of these items here are indicated in more in depth. Okay, but as I said, if you want to be a design thinking guru, from each and every phases, you will have to peel one by one, share ideas. You have to come up with the process, the framework, the processes, the components within each and every of the process. Okay, and especially if you are in design or if you are in script writing or even if you're an engineer, even if you are an economist, then the prototype phase is when you have to come up with storyboards, mock-ups. You have to come up with the actual prototype itself. So the practice of design thinking, as I said earlier in the beginning, is a very broad concept and idea. And you have to have the critical and the creative thinking to be complemented in the design thinking process. So if you are an expert of design thinking, you are actually looking at each and every phases here and delving it and filling it at a very more detailed structure. Okay, even I'm not sure if you have, any one of you have Googled design thinking, but when you Google design thinking, you would find this term called design sprint. Okay, now design sprint is like a process within design thinking. Now this design sprint would be the actual recipe book. Okay, so just an example again to make sure that you're not confused. Design thinking is the actual dish, okay, that you are thinking on designing, but the design sprint, for example, would be in one of the phases inside these 5 phases where you actually create the recipe book, for example. Okay, all right, don't worry so much about design sprint. I'm just telling you it's a bigger perspective about design thinking, all right, but it is enough for now, okay, being a student or a staff member at the university at USM to understand this basic design thinking process and what are the elements, what are the processes that is implemented within each and every phases here. Okay, so I hope everyone is clear about the design thinking process as set by the Stanford Design School. Okay, so let's do another round of quiz. Okay, this time, all right, everyone get ready. Don't type in the code yet because I have not activated. Right, where does critical / creative thinking lies in DT? Okay, so what we're going to do, these 5 phases, all right, in each of the 5 phases, there might be critical thinking element or creative thinking element. So since we have gone through about the types of thinking, all right, which are creative and critical thinking leads to design thinking, now you have to try and answer so that you can understand better whether critical thinking is inside which phase and creative thinking is inside which phase. Okay, all right, so if you are ready, okay, let's go. Hold on, I have to activate okay, all right guys, so go to Menti. Oh, somebody's already inside very fast. Okay, all right, so let's wait. So there will be 5 questions, which means that for each and every phases, there will be a question about critical thinking, creative thinking. Okay, all right, I can see many are joining now. Excellent. Okay, let's wait for a few more. Those who just slept, maybe please wake up. Okay, this time we will also go with 50 participants, okay? The champion just now, Mr. Lee, okay? Please challenge him to be the winner for this time. Okay, 41 participants on my screen now. Okay, we'll wait for maybe 8 more participants. Okay, 7. Okay. Okay, I think we'll start the quiz in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, get ready, guys. Okay, answer fast to get more points, okay? All right, prototype. So what are the thinking process involved? So there are three choices. Can be critical thinking, it can be creative thinking, or maybe it can be both. I should have put an option none, huh? But anyway, yeah, any of the thinking would be involved. Okay, quickly, all right. So the answer is for prototyping. Okay, critical thinking, perfect. Okay, Ziwi seems to be the winner this time. Okay. Oh, hold on. I think there is a problem. Sorry, it didn't start properly. Okay, sorry guys. Okay. Okay, let's start again, okay? Okay, you should start with empathize first. Okay, empathize. Okay, the first process of design thinking. Okay, so let's see, empathize, whether it is critical thinking, creative thinking, or both. Okay. All right. 10 seconds to go. So empathize, what is the type of thinking that is involved? Okay, let's see. So the answer is critical. No, it's creative thinking. So empathize is when you understand your users or understand your customers. Okay, all right, no worries. Moving on, next phase. Okay, let's see first. Oh, lead chalk seems to be again the lead. Okay, excellent. All right, congratulations, lead chalk. And Ziwi, the first three. Okay, let's go now to the next phase, define. Okay. All right. See how many answers. Okay, some answered both. Okay, both and critical thinking are the same numbers now. Okay. Right. I'll give chance to those who have not responded. So the define phase, which thinking type do you think is relevant or is involved in define phase? Okay, any more responses? No? Okay, I'll reveal the answer. So empathize is not just when you want to understand your users, you want to understand the people. Okay, so that involves creative thinking. So when define means you are defining the problem and you are doing it in a more structured way. Okay, hold on. Okay, the correct answer is of course critical thinking. All right. Let's see who answered. Oh, is it Lee Chok again? Congratulations. Okay. Fastest. Okay, congrats. All right. So it seems like the first three are also the same from the previous one, huh? Okay. Now, ideate, I think, right? Okay, ideate, right? Ideate is, okay, just now you empathize and then you define. So when you define, it is supposed to be critical thinking, all right? So when you ideate, what is the thinking? Okay, I'll give 5 more seconds and I will reveal the answer. Okay, for the three responses. Okay, 44 responses. Okay, I'll reveal the answer now. So when you ideate, yes, you have to have creative thinking. Remember, ideas is about the answer rather than the question. So when you ideate, you want to be creative. You want to know what are the things that is able to be done, what can be done, what is possible. It doesn't have to be logical, it has to be an idea. Ideate means to create ideas. Okay, so you have to have creative thinking. Okay, all right. Let's see who this time is the winner again. Okay, I wonder whether this leaderboard is correct now. Keeps on saying we chop. Okay, never mind. All right. Okay, prototype. Okay, prototype we answered in the beginning. It started here just now for some reason. But okay, when you talk about prototype, you are actually creating that problem. Creating the answer for the problem. So when you do a prototype, this is when you are actually talking about the questions. Okay, more questions. Whether this can work, if that can work, is it okay, is it okay, if the color is suitable, if the design is understandable, if the functions are possible for the users to use, for example. Okay, so this is one critical thinking comes into the picture from the prototype phase in design. Okay, and finally, all right, start the ranking. Let's see. Okay, I think the leaderboard has a problem. It's on repeating. Oh no, okay, never mind. Oh, Shah has taken over. Shah ready to okay, thank you guys. All right, congrats to all. Okay, last one. Should be test. Oh, test. Are we going to test? Okay, not sure why the quiz didn't come up with the testing. Okay, never mind. So the last phase, okay, there should be another question. But anyway, Shah here to the winner. Congratulations. All right. Okay, never mind. I'll close this down. Unfortunately, it didn't come up with the test for some reason. I'm not sure why. Okay. So, okay. Can you guys see on your phone on the screen? Okay. Okay, try again, 412281. Okay, so test. Okay, this is important. Why I still want to highlight this because this is slightly different. Okay, all right, 20 participants. You know what it is to answer? Okay, never mind. Okay, there are some answers. Okay, the answer to test is both. Okay, now when we talk about testing, okay, in the phase, all right, let's go back to the screen now. All right, guys. So when we talk about testing, there are two components or two types of thinking involved here, which are critical, both critical and creative thinking. So why? Because in the testing process of design thinking, this is when you have to actually ask more questions, and also, of course, you want to get the right answers. Okay, because you're testing a prototype, testing a product, or testing a solution or the thinking that you have created. So again, in the testing phase, you would always have to be both thinking critically and creatively. All right. But bearing in mind, don't forget, again, design thinking process is not a one-way kind of process, but rather it is going through an iterative. So it can start and go back in the middle, go back to the beginning, and it can continuously go back and forth. Okay. All right. Oh, my video seems to be missing. Okay, I'll just switch it back on. Sharing, I will close sharing my Google Chrome. Okay. So that the internet is much better. Okay. All right, guys. So everyone okay so far? All right. So we have done this. Congratulations to winners. Congratulations to everyone who participated. I think importantly is you participate so that you can understand better in the differences and what design thinking can or how it relates to creative thinking. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to go through design thinking applications. We are almost coming towards the end of the important concepts and also the overview of design thinking. Okay, because I come from the International Center, right? International Office of USM, or we call ourselves IMCC, International Mobility and Collaboration Center. So I like to highlight that because of the globalization factors, we want to make sure that the USM community, okay, that includes not only students and staff, but also our stakeholders, the community, society surrounding us, to have an exposure of cross-culture through design thinking, because design thinking is heavily, or it has been globally used now, okay? And I have given some examples about the differences in terms of culture that is important, and design thinking can help you to apply these problems for solutions, okay? Produce Hebat students in the beginning, remember, Hebat students, not only among local and international students, but together we want to make sure that the interaction, the interactive setting of a global village happens within the university. And again, this is possible to be achieved via design thinking. Okay, increase national and local students' involvement in university activities. All right, so we hope that in the future projects or programs organized by the student council or through USME, International Student Society, or whatever society that you are in, whatever groups or whatever hobbies club that you are in, you can actually get involvement and implement or apply your programs or projects via design thinking. You have actually been doing it already, is it that you didn't realize or you didn't know? Okay, and of course, we want to bring the world to USM and bring USM to the world. Application here in DT means how this can be applied and how this can actually be a good outcome from having design thinking. Okay, and of course, strategic management. When you are doing strategic management, not necessarily in your business, in your daily life, but also in your studies, for example. You have to manage strategically how you want to manage your business, your studies, your FYP, or your thesis writing, or even your research, or even your lab, excuse me, your lab experiments. Okay, you need strategic management. So you can apply design thinking for your daily needs. Okay. Cultural aspect factors. There are many design thinking applications. Okay. Talking about internationalization is one thing, but cultural aspects and factors. Even the fact that in Malaysia, we have differences in terms of culture. We are very diverse. Okay, so remember divergence. Okay, so that is what intercultural competency is able to be applied using design thinking. Okay, and of course, availability of involvement directly in USM's international agenda. So USM is moving towards an internationalization agenda. It has always been. So in USM, we are using design thinking as the approach for internationalization agenda. So these two applications here are very much USM-centric, user-centric, which are us, the students, the staff, and the community surrounding us. But also there are applications for design thinking. Maybe some of you are graduating soon, for example, and going to the real world. Okay, so sports. Okay, a lot of sports activities or sporting events, and also leagues. Okay, or even for a particular club like football club, any clubs, Manchester United, Real Madrid, for example, they have been applying design thinking in order to strategize on their tacticals, or even about the organization itself, about the players, about the training. So design thinking has been applied in sports, education, okay, like us in USM, research, okay, for those of you who are doing research, all of you should be doing research, okay, so you can apply design thinking. Okay, some of you who are going to the business sector later on, some of you are going to work in multinational companies, for example, you would be able to apply design thinking. Also in management, product design, creative, okay, there's a missing bracket there. All right. Okay, cross-cultural organizations due to globalization. If you go to multinational companies such as Intel, or maybe what else, Dell, some of those that I can think of in Penang, they have been applying design thinking. All right, they might be calling it something else, for example. All right, but design thinking has been widely being used, including in multinational organizations, companies, cross-cultural organizations, which means that they have different setting in different countries. So they have to understand the differences in terms of their workforce or their stakeholders. many more. In fact, you can think of anything. DT has been applied to these sectors. Okay, Puan Farhana, I was told that there should be an assignment given also for the students who participate, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. So I actually have an assignment. Now, this is a real case study that I hope at least I will get some participation from you guys. Because of the COVID-19, we are having issues about getting mobility students, okay, exchange students meaning, for inbound and outbound. So some of you guys might have been to or might be aware about the, excuse me, might be aware of the mobility programs that USN have been organizing. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic now happening in the world, we are not able to send students due to travel ban, and of course also incoming students from abroad are not able to come to Malaysia because of the travel ban from the government of Malaysia. So my question to all of you now, you have understood design thinking, okay? Please help us, USM, the university. How do we promote USM now for international mobility programs globally, despite the challenges and despite the issues and problems that we're having? Okay, now this assignment is going to be really important to us, to USM, because it involves a lot of factors about the development of USM as a whole. And uh, I take this opportunity to give to you guys to attend this design thinking program to apply design thinking in order to solve the problem. Okay, so think by design and solve the issue. There is no specific format, but you can always use the design thinking phases to provide your suggestions. Okay, there is no minimum or maximum pages. If you want to write a whole chapter of it, that's also possible. But I hope that you can provide a 1 or 2 pager, okay, 1 or 2 pages of the suggestion, okay, through design thinking to solve this issue. And of course, we are going to be presenting this. Okay, I will be coordinating and combining all the feedbacks, okay, all the design thinking solutions coming from you guys, and then we will consolidate and present this to the top management of the university. And if yours is selected or of a combination of a few, we are going to definitely credit the participants here today who have submitted through the design thinking problem solving of this issue. Okay, so I hope to receive as many participation. Well, the deadline hopefully would be it's 1 week, right, Puan Farhana?
Yeah, sure, boleh.
Okay, boleh. All right, 1 week. So today is Friday. Please send to my email by next Friday. Next Friday is it already Eid? Hari Raya? Not yet, right?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay, that's fine. Great. Okay. So regardless of where you are, ladies and gentlemen, whether you are at home, whether you are at your desa siswa hostel, or wherever you are in the country or outside the country, please try to apply what you have learned from design thinking. You may, of course, Google furthermore, okay, because like I said, today's session with me is more for you to be able to understand a more simplified approach of design thinking. Okay, so this case study here is an actual case study that I need your participation through design thinking to be able to solve the problems for USM. Okay, because it involves so many other factors, but for you in design thinking, I just need you to suggest how do we promote the international mobility programs globally now with the current situation of the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, all right, so that's the assignment. Deadline is next Friday. Okay, so you have 1 week. Please try to send it earlier if you can, because we will start consolidating. Let me just check on the date. The 22nd of Friday, please, for those of you who participated, please put that date in mind. Okay, 22nd, 22 May 2020, which is next Friday. All right, that's the assignment. Now, we have come to the end of the sharing session, basically. So the conclusion here is, with design thinking, what you need to do. Okay, let's see. You have to collaborate more with people. Okay, because again, if you remember the design thinking way of reasoning, that's abductive, and abductive reasoning requires more than one opinion. Okay, so that is when you have to collaborate more. Okay, I don't know why it's coming out this way. Okay, let me just open up everything. Okay, so collaborate. Okay, and then it's not coming out as how I wanted it to be. Okay. Okay, conclusion is collaborate. Okay, number two, be a team player. Okay, so when you are talking about design thinking, you have to be in a team of people to solve issues or problems. Okay, and when you use design thinking, you have to work usually in a team via collaboration. So be a team player. Number three, okay, it's not coming out for some reason. I'm not sure. Okay, I'll just I'll just read through. Okay. I hope you can see. Puan Farhana, can you see the conclusion page?
Yes.
Okay. So number one, collaborate. Number two, be a team player. Know your stakeholders. Okay. The empathize part is always the key point, the key entry point. Who are your stakeholders? Okay. So know your stakeholders, and then you have to also understand your stakeholders. Now, when we talk about stakeholders, there's another bunch of course or program to learn about stakeholders. But stakeholders are basically the people you are working with. Okay, the customers, the users, the people surrounding you, your team player, your team members, the people who are within the ecosystem. Okay, and then keep on innovating. Okay, keep on innovating. Don't be afraid to innovate something. It doesn't have to always be successful, but as long as you keep on innovating, you are trying to achieve something, then you are on the right track or the right path. And how to innovate is through design thinking. Okay, be creative, all right, creative thinking. Be culturally sensitive or interculturally sensitive. So again, I have highlighted a few times about culture. Intercultural competency or intercultural skills are another set of skills that you might want to learn. That will be another course of program. We will take also another series of discussion about intercultural. And finally, okay, the conclusion here is to finally think by design, critically and not by chance. Okay, if those of you who have been in USM under the reign of the former Vice Chancellor, Dato Asma, Professor Asma, she always likes to say this: do things by design and not by chance. Okay, so this is what we want our students now or our community of USM now to do, is not only to do things by design, but to start thinking itself by design and not by chance. So when you are thinking about something, a solution, you already start doing it, start thinking by design. Okay, all right, so with that, thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Puan Farhana to maybe check on a few things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Encik Aizat,
You're
for
most
sharing
welcome.
your knowledge and experience. I particularly enjoy the visual illustration and also the interactive games that you share, the Menti games. It's very interesting, so which made the content easily understandable. And to all the participants, thank you for your commitment, because I hope that you found this training informative and worthwhile, because our goals is to increase your understanding about design thinking, yeah, Aizat?
Yes, very
Yes,
true.
and hope that design thinking skills or critical thinking skills will support your employability competencies soon. Yeah,
Yeah,
or
sure.
Hebat agenda, yeah, Hebat agenda. So there were many topics covered during the training, and Encik Aizat did an outstanding job of sharing his expertise.
Thank you very much.
And if you have any question, I think please feel free to contact Encik Aizat via email. I think aizat.hisham.
Please do so.
Yeah.
Let me just open this page once again.
Yeah, at usm.my. And remember, submit your assignment by 22nd of May. The upcoming Friday, is it?
Yep, next Friday.
Next Friday. Yeah. Thank you again for wonderful webinar training. It was good on so many points, and all participants also. Thank you for attending this training and being part of HDC training. I wish everybody is good now. Ada boleh bagi feedback tak? Say good.
Anyone would like to maybe ask something?
Ask something. Any question from the participants?
Well, you're thinking about the questions. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Hebat Development Center. I think HDC has been doing a tremendous job to engage our students to come. So please, to those of you who participated today's session, you should promote to your friends as well. Check out the Facebook page of HDC. For more training. There are so many more happening, especially now that we are in this MCO period. Most of us are working not from office, work from home, and you are studying also from home or from your rooms, from your hostel. So take the opportunity to learn more. It's a new normal. Okay, you have been hearing new normal. So learning remotely is the new normal now.
Yeah, new normal.
The slide, of course, definitely you can. I think Farhana will be sharing the slide, right?
I will share this slide to upload to our website.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And Lee Chok, the winner, he mentioned starting to think on how to promote USM. Thank you very much. Yeah, I look forward to your feedback. Okay.
Please recommend this e-training kompetensi siswa by HDC to others, to your friends in the future. Yeah.
And Puan Farhana, since we are at the topic, I think a lot of international students are also interested to participate. So I think we have to bear in mind that the program can be shared in English due to the language, due to language limitation.
Thank you for the feedback, inshallah.
All right. Okay, so yep, there's no questions so far. If anything, like Puan Farhana said, just email to me. Okay, I'm reachable, inshallah, and I will respond to your inquiries as soon as possible. And as Puan Farhana said, the slide is going to be available on the website soon. Okay, back to you, Puan Farhana.
Also the recording.
Oh yeah, there is also a recording. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. I think with that, thank you Cik Aizat and all the participants.
Very much welcome.
Okay, inshallah, selamat berbuka, selamat berpuasa.
Yeah.
And I think that's all.
Okay, guys, take care, stay safe, be safe, and be healthy. All right, selamat puasa. And for those Muslims, this is the last 10 days of Ramadan. Maybe I can also wish Selamat Hari Raya already. Happy
Selamat Hari Raya.
All right, okay. Ma'azabatin. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Take care. All right, all the best.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Bye.
Bye.